Anyone else had to find a new spot since daylight savings?
Hi everyone. It's 4:30. I'm sorry I didn't give the 1 minute notice, but we are live on YouTube.
Are we ready to go?
You are ready to go. I apologize.
No worries. Thank you. Good evening. Today is Thursday, November the 12th, and as it is 4:30, I call to order this meeting of the Vance Monument Task Force. My name is Deborah Miles, and I am co-chair of the task force, along with Ms. Orlean Simmons. As this is November and Native American Heritage Month, I'd like us to pause and recognize that we, as residents of Buncombe County, reside on the land that has been the home of Indigenous people for the last 10,000 years, including the ancestors of the contemporary Cherokee people. This is land that was taken and included a forced removal. That is also part of the story of our mountain home. And now I will call the roll. Ms. Orlean Simmons.
Present.
Catherine Calhoun Cutshall.
Here.
Dennis Bagnett. Dennis Bagnett. I'll come back. Lawrence Gilliam. Lawrence Gilliam.
Here. I'm here.
Okay. Savannah Gibson.
Here.
Elizabeth Harper.
Here.
Essie Hutchinson. Essie Hutchinson. I'll come back. David King.
Here.
Bernard Oliphant.
Present.
Andrea Olson.
Here.
Ben Scales.
Here.
Shirley W. Whiteside. Shirley W. Whiteside. I saw her picture on there. Maybe the sound is off, Ms. Whitesides.
She's muted.
Okay. You're muted, Ms. Whitesides.
There you go.
Shirley W. Whitesides.
She's talking, but you can't hear her.
Okay. All right. Well, I can see her, so hopefully that'll count. And we got a message from Dennis that he's having a hard time getting on, and looks like I just got a message. Essie too. Let's see what she says. Oh, yes. Would somebody reach out to Essie? Maybe Nia. Nia, are you there? Do you have Essie's telephone number?
Hey, sorry, that was hard to unmute for whatever reason. I can find it and I will send her a text.
Good, thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, thank you to everybody for being present today. Let's now call for a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Bernard, so moved.
And a second, and if you'll state your name first. Thank you, Bernard.
This is Catherine. I second.
Thank you, Catherine. We've had a motion and a second to accept the minutes, and we will again do the accepting of the minutes. Ms. Simmons? And we have to unmute. Ms. Simmons?
Aye.
Dennis Bagnett?
Yes.
Glad you're here. Lawrence Gilliam?
Yes.
Savannah Gibson?
Yes.
Elizabeth Harper?
Aye.
Essie Hutchinson? I think she's going to get on in a minute. David King?
Yay.
Bernard Oliphant? Bernard Oliphant? Accepting minutes?
I said yes, but it muted. Aye.
Sorry about that. Ben Scales?
Aye. What'd you do?
Shirley W. Whitesides? Ms. Whitesides? maybe you're muted. Ms. Whitesides? Okay, I think we can accept the minutes as approved and seconded and voted on. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Cortina.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Good afternoon, co-chairs. Good afternoon, task force members, and those that are joining us from home. At this time, I am going to ask anybody not speaking if you can make sure your mic is muted, please. We're getting a little bit of feedback. And I want to apologize in advance for the tech issues today. I know I also am having a little bit of a busted mic, so I apologize in advance if you all hear any feedback as we do this work online. So at this time, I want to just provide a brief overview of our plan for today, and then I'm actually going to be sharing my screen as we move into a presentation from the small group subcommittees that were comprised of the task force members as they deliberated on repurpose, relocate, and removal. For the past 12 weeks, we have been on a journey all together to engage the community and to meet the ask of the charge that the task force has been brought together by, which is to come to this recommendation for the community. There were tasks that were assigned the task force that I'll go more over in depth whenever we move through the presentation. But I just want to name that today's agenda, as you can refer to it either online for those that are here on the call in the chat box. And you can follow us along as we go through our presentations from the task force members. And that today's conversation will be a deliberation of sorts. It will be a discussion. We'll have an opportunity to hear from task force members, both around the 3 pathways of recommendation and hear from them as they offer their final words and statements to you all. Next week's meeting will be focused on a public vote. We will be joined by the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners as well as Asheville City Council members at that time. And we will be posting the agenda as usual by Tuesday of this coming week. At this time, I want to just open the floor up for a few moments before I do start sharing my screen and move us into an overview of the timeline, the due diligence, and the small group to see if there are any task force members that have questions, comments, or needs around any public comments that you received or any updates that you've made to the folders that you want to make others aware of as we go into this final week, or any needs that you have. And so the floor is open at this time. And I'm just gonna check and see if anybody has. Okay. Great. So no questions or comments. That being said, we'll move along in our agenda.
Cortina, I see Miss Shirley trying to talk.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let's see. Miss Shirley, you are unmuted, but I don't think that we can hear you still. I'm wondering if you have a Bluetooth connection on your computer or if your volume on your computer is down. The other option is for you to try calling in if you'd like. You can also type in your question or comment in the chat box, Ms. Shirley, if you would like to do that, and I'll read it aloud. Okay. So at some point, I'll get that question or comment from Ms. Shirley. Before we move into the presentation, I do want to name pretty soon into the presentation, we will have the small group leaders report out from their small group conversations. I know Ms. Shirley is the group leader for the repurpose group. And so since she is having some tech issues, I wonder if anybody else in that small group could be thinking about, or maybe you all want to discuss amongst yourselves as I'm getting started, if somebody else can offer that report out for repurpose while she's getting reconnected. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen here. So if you can just bear with us here. Get this sharing. And Ms. Shirley, I see that you're back now. If you want to try unmuting or the chat box while I'm getting my screen shared, you're welcome to speak. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Can someone unmute and let me know? Because it takes up the whole screen.
I can see you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we'll move into, and again, Ms. Shirley, if you want to put it in the chat box, I will be sure to check out your comment in just a moment. And if the repurpose group wants to just chat amongst yourselves to make sure that we can hear from you all in just a moment. So the the presentation for today that we'll be sharing out from is again connected to the overall scope for the Vance Monument Task Force, which is a joint task force from the City of Asheville, as well as Buncombe County Commissioners. And at this time, in our journey, we recognize that it is important for us to have conversations to share back what has been learned and gained since this resolution. Just really briefly to touch on the overview of the task force scope, that this work really was initiated at the resolutions that were passed by Asheville City Council, Buncombe County Board of Commissioners. And through that resolution, this task force that has been putting in time for the past 12 weeks was formed and charged with making a decision by November 19th, which is next week's meeting. As part of that overview, the recommendation of African Americans to be honored in the space was part of the scope and expectations of the task force, as well as coupling the charge of the task force with a design process that will come at a later date and likely be done by an African American artist. This is just an overview of the timeline, and I know there are quite a few words here, but just to kind of provide a visual of the work that's been done within this task force over the 3 months that they were charged with completing the recommendation, as well as meeting the other expectations for identifying African American historians, looking at financial implications, and of course doing their due diligence with the recommendation. August 20th, September 3rd, and September 10th dates was really a time of orientation, outlining the timeline, overlooking the strategy and needs in order to complete the scope of work, taking special care to gather citizen input, especially those impacted by the history and meaning of the monument. September 17th, 24th, and October 1st meetings. At those times, the task force members underwent a period of historical analysis, hearing from community historians and leaders and educators, both from the African American community, Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians, as well as hearing the untold stories around Pack Square Park, that of Zebulon Vance, and most especially historical African American neighborhoods and experiences here in Asheville and Buncombe County. The October 8th and 15 meetings were primarily focused on deepening the plan for community engagement. We have been supported in this process by the Buncombe County and City of Asheville staff teams. And many of you have, if you've been tuning in and following along, you've heard from these amazing accomplices in completing this recommendation. And they also took charge for making sure that there were press releases, social media posts, PSAs, as well as banners, direct outreach to community members and leaders, and many other means of organizing the community and making sure that the voices of the community were uplifted and heard. October 22nd and 29th were the two hosted virtual town halls, which I don't know if those have necessarily been done before. We had to really reimagine how the town halls and listening sessions could happen in light of COVID, and wanting to also be mindful of public safety. And so the task force members went about a process of designing those town halls and hearing from elders, students, parents, Vance family descendants, and African American community members was able to happen successfully as part of that process.
Cortina, this is Ashley. For some reason, your sound went out.
Let me see. Am I muted? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And please continue to do that and let me know. I think it seems like we're having problems with tech today, so grace is appreciated. Okay, so last 2 points on this slide. So after the virtual town halls, which last week the task force members went about a process of due diligence, and many had been meeting prior to that point on the recommendation to remove, relocate, or repurpose, which we'll hear more about in just a moment. And this meeting, as well as the next meeting, is going to really be the meetings where the task force members are zooming in on presenting their findings. That really has been the culmination of the small group work last week and prior, research, asking questions and hearing from historians and educators, as well as reviewing public comments. And I can safely say that the task force members paid careful attention to make sure that they got every single comment and reviewed those as part of this process. That being said, the next and final meeting, once again, will be the vote of the final recommendation. And at that time, there will be just a couple of statements and acknowledgements, I believe, from our co-chairs, and then this will be presented to the Asheville City Council as well as the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, and this will enter another phase, and the scope of this particular task force will at that time be considered complete. So with that being said, I want to, apologies, didn't realize that I wasn't fully sharing. So this time I want to turn it over to the selected group leader. I want to check in with Ms. Shirley to see if your volume is working and we can hear you. If you want to go on, or if somebody else needs to take your place. And I don't know, I don't think we can, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if others can, Ms. Shirley. Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you, Ms. Shirley, unfortunately. I'm so sorry. I know you were ready to go. I'm wondering if another group member is willing to support and provide an overview for this particular group.
Ben, why don't you go ahead and I got the back.
I nominate you, Bernard.
Hot potato.
We won't waste time.
Okay.
The purpose committee met. We had a very deliberate discussion on how the community could benefit from repurposing. Our first major bullet was repurposing could transform the monument to become an educational lighthouse for learning about African American contributions to Asheville and Buncombe County. Repurposing would preserve an important piece of local architecture designed by Richard Sharp Smith and built by local Masonic craftsmen. Repurposing could help diversify Asheville's public art collection. Repurposing could complement and emphasize the beauty of our mountains and our skies. Repurposing could contribute to community healing, assembly, unity, and re-education. Those were primarily our pros, and here are our cons. Repurposing may be too expensive. Repurposing may make some people unhappy. Repurposing fails to respond to the African American and Black Asheville demand community calling for removal. Repurposing with use of symbolism could be misconstrued and lead to further misinformation. Repurposing may be a missed opportunity to reflect on African American contribution, culture, and history.
Good afternoon. Excuse me 1 minute. This is Richard. There's a lot of feedback on the line. So if you're not speaking, would you please make sure you mute your phone or your computer?
Those were our pros and cons, Ms. Cortina.
Okay, thank you very much. And it seems like people didn't hear a lot of slide 1 because of there was some feedback. So what I'm going to do is just take a moment to go back to those slides, and I'll just pause on those slides and allow people to read it. I believe you can still see my screen, and then I'm going to invite the next group. And maybe I also will read these out loud because I know some people are joining by phone. So that would make it more accessible. So let's go back. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bernard and the Repurpose Small Group. So I will just read these once again in case people are joining via phone and can't see the screen. So how would the community benefit from repurposing? Repurposing could transform the monument to be an educational lighthouse for learning about African American contributions to Asheville and Buncombe County's history. It was this group's recommendation that the 65-foot obelisk does not depict a human figure or a bronze sculpture of Zebulon Vance. The Egyptians used the obelisk to commemorate the dead, represent their kings, and honor their gods. The obelisk in Asheville could tell the real history in Asheville by depicting the following 4 sizes of the obelisk. Plinth 1, tell the truth about Vance. Plinth 2, explain, document, or illustrate slaves sold on the site. And then plinth 3 and 4, illustrate through artwork the accomplishments, contributions, culture, and history of African Americans in Asheville. And so I'll just pause here for a moment before I move to the next slide. The remaining points around how the community would benefit from repurposing. Point number 2, repurposing would preserve an important piece of local architecture designed by Richard Sharp Smith and built by local Masonic craftsmen. 3, repurposing could help diversify the city of Asheville's public art collections. 4, repurposing could complement and emphasize the beauty of our mountains and sky. And 5, repurposing could contribute to community healing, assembly, unity, re-education, and become part of an African American museum in Asheville. This group's recommendation and/or observation is to design the obelisk with ever-changing lights to show the words hope, unity, love, peace. Show essential dates such as Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Kwanzaa, Black Lives Matter, etc. The obelisk could be used as a memorial to pay respect. And I'll just read these just in case people didn't hear them, and then we'll move to the next group. So cons, why might you not recommend repurposing? 1, repurposing may be too expensive. 2, repurposing may make some people unhappy. 3, repurposing fails to respond to the African American and Black Asheville demands community calls for removal. 4, repurposing with use of symbolism could be misconstrued and lead to further misinformation. And then 5, repurposing may be a missed opportunity to reflect on African American contributions, culture, and history. So I again want to thank the Repurpose Group for your due diligence. If folks have any questions or comments, if you can hold those to the end. Once we have a chance to hear from all the groups, since we're in presentation mode, I'll stop sharing my screen and then we'll be able to answer, deliberate, and hear from task force members at that time. And so with the next group, feel free to read what you have here on your presentation. Also, you're welcome to share about your process or anything else you'd like to share. And at this time, I'll welcome on the Relocate group.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lonnie.
Okay, great. Well, relocation group was absolutely fantastic and a pleasure to work with Dennis Fagner, Elizabeth Harper, Deb Miles, and Andrea Olson. And I think the beauty of what we had was open heart candor and great debate. And out of that, we came up with meeting our challenge about relocation, the pros and the cons. Ironically, if you relocate, it has to be removed before it can be relocated. But there's a reckoning with the way that the history of the Confederacy and its aftermath throughout the Jim Crow era has been memorialized. The Vance Monument in Asheville, North Carolina is one of 1,800 monuments that were built between 1889 and 1929. On May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, George Floyd was killed by police officers, sparking a Confederate protest movement that has spread throughout the entire United States. Since that time, its inception, 59 Confederate and Civil War monuments across the United States have been removed. 5 were relocated in response to recognition of the regressive and racial nature of these monuments. In North Carolina, almost 20 such monuments have been removed. 3 have been relocated, and public schools with names of Confederates are now being renamed in honor of African Americans that have made major contributions during their lifetime. With a national movement underway, moving the Vance Monument to a different location coincides with the reckoning in the moral crisis and lays bare America's deep injustices. Our pros are, we acknowledge the Vance Monument is an important symbol to some citizens in Buncombe County. By relocating it to another site, the monument can continue to serve as a symbol of recognition for a portion of the people of our mountain. Contextualizing the story and allowing us to preserve history to learn from. We acknowledge that the Vance Monument and the footprint the monument rests on is a source of oppression and painful memories for many of the people of Buncombe County. By relocating it from its central heart of downtown Asheville to another location, it frees the space to tell another narrative about the people of our mountain home and one that fits the calling of the 21st century. Relocating the monument would align Asheville with communities across the nation currently trying to tell a different story. Additionally, we want the replacement to acknowledge the stories of Americans, African Americans, Native Americans, and other indigenous people. Relocating the monument will allow it to be interpreted as an architectural artifact, both as an obelisk and as a monument designed by renowned Asheville architect Richard Sharp Smith. Those are our pros. Our cons. The footprint of the vast monument has stood as a space of power and control by white people since the arrival of the settlers to indigenous lands around 1792. It was a site where enslaved people were jailed, punished, and then sold. Its construction was part of the national movement to reassert white control by erecting monuments to those who participated in the Civil War. Prior to 1965, it was a site of segregated bathrooms and water fountains, with segregated space expanding to all surrounding areas of the monument. By moving it to another location, It gives weight to the power and control white people and the institutions they control have exerted over African Americans and other people of color. By moving the Vance Monument, the burden of interpretation and the ire of citizens who want it removed entirely will be placed on the Vance birthplace staff. Relocating the monument may incur unintended legal and financial consequences. The monument has stood in its current place since 1897, and it may require significant funds to dismantle and reassemble and possibly repair the structure if it is damaged in the process. Further, legal action has already been threatened and is inevitable by persons invoking North Carolina General Statute 100 regarding monuments, memorials, and parks. Author Betsy Brown Braun writes, "Prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child." In many ways, the various narratives of history are painful to groups of people. There is a line of thought that states, if we remove all difficult from our youth, then they will not develop the resiliency for when difficulty arises. In that way, by relocating the monument, we are removing an opportunity for youth to gain resilience and wrestle with history that is difficult. In other words, if we remove all the potentially disturbing, offensive, saddening, maddening, questionable topics and items from our children's path, we miss a chance to raise resilient children. The Vance Monument rests in the center of the city of Asheville in a location of significant social recognition. Its relocation is fraught with difficulties, specifically in following North Carolina General Statute 100, which requires a location of similar prominence and importance. There's one other thing I wanted to share. I don't know if this is appropriate time or not. I sent it out, and I don't know if anybody took the time to read it. I would hope that maybe Neil could put it up for me. And it has to do with an author, and her name is Caroline Randall Williams. She's a graduate of the University of Mississippi and also Harvard. Her literary honor came, I think, in 2015 when she and her mom did a cookbook entitled Soul Food Love. The thing that I would hope you would take the time to Google and check out and read on your own is an article that she wrote, and it's entitled, "You Want a Confederate Monument? My Body is a Confederate Monument." From that, she talks about what it's like to be DNA and genealogy-wise more white than black, and yet she's considered and treated as 100% black. And some of the excerpts that she talks about is that the black people I come from were owned and raped by white people I come from. So who dares to tell me to celebrate them? She goes on to say in that whole document, I say the monuments of stone and metal, the monuments of cloth and wood, all the man-made monuments, they must come down. I defy any sentimental Southerner to defend our ancestors to me. I am quite literally made of the reasons to strip them of their laws. And if you get a chance, it's much more deeper, and I don't want to waste time in this meeting, but I would encourage you to take the time to Google Caroline Randall Williams and read for yourself. I think it will touch your heart, it will open your minds, and it will help you as we come to final vote next week. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Lonnie, and for the due diligence and the work within the group. Relocate. Yes, Ms. Shirley, you had a comment.
I got my sound fixed.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome back. Did you want to go ahead now before we move into the next group? You had something to share earlier. Does now seem like a rest?
Well, you were able to read the information that we came up together with our team, with our committee that was Ben Scales, Bernard Oliphant, Essie Hutchinson. And it was a hard task for us to deliberate on this. And then we even attended a Zoom meeting about telling the truth about monuments. And my opinion that the monument, like we stated, that it does not represent the figure of Vance, nor is not a bronze sculpture of Vance. And I hope people will take that into consideration. And the monument could be incorporated if they ever wanted to do an African American museum, could be a part of it, because we need to tell the truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words, Ms. Shirley. And I'm glad your sound got situated, and thank you for naming the people in the group. I believe I said this earlier, but I do want to acknowledge for those that are tuning in to the meeting that the task force members went about this process with the small groups, not based on any prior vote that was made, that this was a process of due diligence in order to really look carefully and closely at each of these potential options that they have in front of them. So that's part of the work that Ms. Shirley is speaking of on the phone calls and meeting with the group. So at this time, I'm going to share my screen again. And we have one other small group to hear from, which is the removal group. So if you all want to be ready, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so I don't cause any feedback. And I'm going to share my screen, and I will turn it over to you. Just one moment.
No. Okay, do I just go ahead and start? Okay, cool. So we compiled this list. It's a mix of things that we heard during public comment and ideas that we came up collectively with as a group. And so I guess we'll just start. The first one is the passage of the joint resolution by Asheville City Council and the Buncombe County Commissioners creating this task force demonstrates the desire of community members and local government to remove the monument. Officials have demonstrated their desire to follow through with action to remove the monument by requiring the United States Daughters of the Confederacy to remove 2 other privately owned Confederate monuments off of public land. So this is something that we're already doing in Asheville, and as other people have pointed out, doing throughout the rest of the country. When the monument was erected in Asheville's public square, it was at the direction of one man, George W. Pack, who made it a condition in his deed of the land to the city that a monument to Vance be built there. In this democratic process, our task force found the majority of hundreds of public comment received were in favor of removal. In addition to several hundred comments received through the public input site, a petition to remove Vance Monument started by local resident Roy Harris contains over 94,000 signatures in support of the proposal, allowing them to voice their opposition to the monument by other potent means. So if we chose to remove the monument, it would finally be a democratic decision of what we want our city to look like. And it's kind of like we're reclaiming the rights of our city. It's pretty cool. Asheville City Council, Buncombe County Commissioners, and Buncombe County Health and Human Services have declared the monument a risk to health and safety of the community and declared racism a public health crisis. So that's why we'd be able to remove it within NC State Statute 100 because it is a risk to the safety of people of color within Asheville, because they constantly have to see it and be reminded that we are choosing to have a monument that is dedicated to white supremacy and racism. Anecdotal evidence suggests that many residents and visitors have no knowledge or understanding of the monument or the person and ideals it means to represent. Therefore, if the monument is removed, the history or teaching tool thereof will not be erased. The story of Zebulon Vance in the Civil War live on in the documents, books, and memory institutions like museums and historic sites. Removing the monument is acknowledgement of our racist history and allow our community the opportunity to move forward in unity. Next, our local economy relies on millions of tourists who visit our community each year. If one goal of tourism officials in city and county government is to attract a diverse array of visitors and perhaps future residents, a monument to a Confederate general could turn away some, especially considering the population trend suggests that a majority of Americans will be people of color within the next 50 years. Moving the obelisk and replacing it with a new, more inspiring piece of public art would be an economic asset to our community. And then I found some statistics from the Mandela research firm that recently did a study in 2018 that said the economic value of African-American travelers has increased to 63 billion from 48 billion in 2010. So it's a trend that more and more African-American people are traveling and willing to spend money. And of those African-American travelers, cultural travelers are the highest spenders, spending an average of $2,000 per trip. And cultural travelers are people who travel to places looking to find American cultural and heritage attractions, such as like museums or dance performances or monuments or other historical sites. And that's about 43% of African-American travelers. So almost the majority of African-American travelers who are spending that $63 billion are looking for cultural sites. So if we were to replace the monument with something else that had more significance to the real history of Asheville and uplifting the voices of people of color within Asheville, we could possibly tap into a large amount of money within the tourism industry. If the monument is left in its original form rather than completely removed or its materials and altered beyond recognition, it will continue to serve as a symbol of white supremacy to those most affected by its presence. So that's a pro to removing it and not just repurposing it. If the monument is removed, it can make way for a new, inclusive, and uplifting piece of public art created by Black artists as a gift to the Black community. This would be one small piece of the more comprehensive plan to move toward equity and racial justice by local governments and could have additional benefit of attracting new and more diverse visitors. So once again, bringing in new forms of money and more diversity to Asheville. During the virtual town halls, the task force heard from members of the Vance family who expressed a desire that the monument be removed due to the damage it has not only caused to the Black community, but to their family as well. The Vance family expressed their solidarity with the Black community and their call for removal. Cool. So moving into the cons, we had 5. Public discussion of the monument is divisive and many have expressed strong misgivings about removing the monument. Ultimately, removal could continue to fracture the community. And I would agree that Asheville is definitely fractured, but I feel like it is fractured in a way that historically has harmed people of color within the city, especially when you look at things like health disparities and wealth divide. Like 10,000 of the 10,000 business owners we have in Asheville, or the 12,000 we have, 10,000 are non-minority and only 1,200 are of minority. And then when you look at fetal mortality rates, 82% of fetal mortalities are from Black women compared to 20% that are from white women. And then Black infant mortality rate between 3 months to 1 year is 72% compared to white infant mortality rate, which is 31%. So we definitely have a lot of fracturing within Asheville already. And I think that now it's time that we maybe change our tactic and start to become more inclusive to the people who have been continuously harmed instead of fearing the people who have continuously benefited. Some do not believe that the monument is a Confederate monument because it does not allow Vance's actions as a Confederate general and governor specifically. Rather, they see it as either a monument to an influential and popular politician or as a symbol of Asheville itself. And I can understand that because two things can be true, as one of my friends likes to say a lot. So it can be a monument that does memorializing an influential politician and influential Asheville person. But if you look into his legacy of what he actually was doing, it can also represent white supremacy. The obvious list was designed by a famous architect, Richard Sharp Smith, and is a beautiful piece of today's historical landscape. To remove it would be removing a beautiful and important piece of art. And that was our list. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Savannah, and thank you, Removal Group. Let's see. Go back here. Make sure I can stop sharing my screen. Nope. Okay, so I do want to also just say thank you to all the task force members for their service and due diligence. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and move into discussion, insights, and final statements from task force members. And again, thank you all that are tuning in and the task force members for your grace and patience with the technology today. And at this time, I'm going to just go ahead and call the task force members by order of your name on the agenda. And I would also start by saying a couple of things. We have about 3 minutes each, 2 to 3 minutes per task force member. And I'll be keeping time for each of you as your time comes to share. And I would also just remind you all and thank you all again for your service in this process, and kind of as a reminder that there won't be much opportunity next week in next week's meeting for this kind of deliberation, I can't say that, and discussion, and to make any other statements or queries, if you will, about this process or about your work with a small group or your role as a task force member. And so this really is an opportunity for you all to hear from each other, as well as the community to hear from you. And this is not a time that we'll be taking any sort of formal vote, but it's more for you to share what you feel called to share. I do want to go in order of the agenda, but I'm curious, Mr. Bernard, I see you're unmuted. Were you ready to go? Were you volunteering to go first?
That wasn't the intent, but I will not give up the seconds.
Okay.
I'd first like to thank Mr. Gillum for his most eloquent introductory remarks, and ask that he would share those with us in writing if he can.
I'll do my best to get that done.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and go in order of the agenda. And if you are not ready to go, or you feel like you're not ready to share, you want to listen this first round, that's okay. You can just say pass, and then we'll come back to you toward the end. So first on my agenda is Miss Orlean Simmons. I don't know if I can see you, but I think you're on here.
I pass for this moment. Please come back to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Deborah Miles. Oh, you're muted, Deborah. Looks like you're still muted. The button escapes. See if we can. Well, we thought you were up next. Do you want to give it another moment, and we'll come back to you?
Let's see. Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go. Yeah, perfect. I was just going to say we can come back. Go right ahead.
For me, being on the relocate team did help me see the challenges relocating the monument pose, including the unlikely task of finding a site that could do historical interpretation, as well as it being a white supremacy pilgrimage destination wherever it would go. I just don't think anybody's going to want it. There are no legal issues in the way of removal due to public safety issues. In fact, 19 other communities in North Carolina have already removed their monuments. With removal, we are acting in line with the great southern cities, including Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, Richmond, Montgomery, New Orleans, and Atlanta, which included the removal of an obelisk, and there are more obelisk removals to come. As to repurposing, we do not want to be the enduring city that keeps this monument to a person and time period connected to the Confederacy and to Jim Crow. And as Dr. Mullen has said, there's no way to repurpose the existing monument. If it is renamed with a few words removed and others put on, it will always be the Vance Monument and a vestige of a period in our community's story that promoted white supremacy and white control of all major institutions. The monument is an artifact of a different period of time. Plenty of times I've seen this community grow out of institutions such as a beloved house of worship, school, or other central place to our sense of collective self. We develop a ritual of decommissioning the structure, taking it apart, and replacing it with what better suits the needs of the future. This monument contributes to racism as a public health crisis, as was declared by Buncombe County Health Department, and is also the part of the work of reparations. I also do this as a white person in an effort to center the voices of African Americans as we are directed, especially those of the more recent generations. The repurposing of the site needs to go beyond the footprint of the wide base of the monument to be about placemaking. Placemaking capitalizes on a local community's assets and inspirations to create public places that promote public health and a sense of self within the community. We've discussed that this new space could also be a gateway to other social enterprises in our community, especially in the African American community. I'd like for folks to the mountains in the far west. Now imagine that street in front of the Biltmore building, also for pedestrians only, as it only provides a few additional parking spaces at the current moment. That opens up a larger area for placemaking. I know that artists, African American artists with an eye towards placemaking, can repurpose that site to tell a far more inclusive story about our mountain home, a story that will make a way for those born in the 21st and 22nd centuries ready to take on the challenges of future generations, not the mistakes and tragedies of the past.
Thank you so much for that, Deb. This time I want to welcome Catherine Calhoun-Cutshaw, if you're ready to share.
Sure, thanks, Bertina. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to the city and the county, first of all, for passing this joint resolution and creating this task force. If you all had not done that, we wouldn't be sitting here, and for appointing such a wonderful group of people to work with. This has been a real honor and a pleasure to work with folks who are now I can consider colleagues. So this has been a wonderful and honoring experience. I, as a historian, as a trained historian and an archivist, come at this from a preservation lens. But I want to say that that does not stop me from taking into the real considerations of our community and the damage that this monument has caused our community. So that is to say that as the obelisk stands, it will always be the Vance Monument. We can cover up, we can change wording, we can etch and re-etch, just as Deborah just mentioned a quote from Dr. Mullen, but it will always be the Vance Monument. This monument was also constructed in the year 1898 and erected in May 1898, just months before the Wilmington Massacre, which we are acknowledging the anniversary of this week. Happened November 10th, 1898. This was during a period of racial violence and political upheaval. That is the context within the context for the raising of this monument was in a political climate that was focused on direct violence against Black people for even daring to exert their right to vote. It's also during a period of time we were continuing to construct rail, and convict laborers were being used as essentially slaves. The 13th Amendment allows for slavery within the confines of being in prison. And many of those people died. So I just want us to think about and acknowledge the environment in which this monument was erected. And then finally, the people of our community have made it clear, and they've made it clear since this monument was rededicated in 2015, that A, it never should have been restored and rededicated, and B, they want it removed as quickly as possible. And when we look at our public comment, the overwhelming majority of people are in favor of removing the monument. As a citizen of Asheville, a lifelong resident of Asheville and Buncombe County, and someone who is directly connected to people who enslaved others in the past, I would like to see this monument removed. So I'm looking forward to moving together into the future with my fellow community members in unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. And just a reminder for everyone, you're welcome to acknowledge your preference in any way that you so choose. And just as a reminder, this is not us officially taking votes, so don't feel that you have to say those words. Next, I want to welcome Dennis A. Fagnet Jr., if you're ready to go next.
I am, Cortina. Thank you.
Thank you.
So very much, I think this should be probably repeated by all of us, I hope. But I do too wish to thank both city and county for putting us together, and the county specifically for allowing me to serve on this committee. I've definitely learned a lot. And then working amongst the peers of this task force has truly been a pleasure. So I appreciate all that. I'm not big for preparing things. I typically just like to go off the cuff and really just speak from the heart. So as a personal view, I look at that monument and I'm one that probably looks to preserve things. And I do appreciate a story that can be learned and very much go towards making sure we learn our history so therefore we don't repeat it. But upon reflection, we have to look at what I committed to when I accepted a position on this task force and what the county and the city told us to do. And that was to listen to the citizens and, more importantly, those most affected by it. So that weighs heavily on me because that's the charge, and that's the charge I accepted. And so, as Catherine also said, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming what the community wants, and that is to remove the monument. So although I am not anyway trained in history, I do enjoy it. And it's clear what the monument was. It may also be unfortunate that Vance's name is tied to it because I believe he did a lot of good things in his life. But I think the biggest turning point with me was from hearing from a direct ancestor of Vance. And that kind of put it in perspective to me that he will be remembered in history for what he has done, that this monument does not need to be there for his legacy to continue. So with all of that said, I have to go with the charge. And next week, we'll be happy to cast my vote to remove the Vance Monument. Thank you. I appreciate working with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Next, I'm going to welcome on Savannah Gibson, if you're ready.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I also want to say how glad I am to have been able to work with all of y'all and to move this process together. And I really appreciate all the pros and cons that were presented by each group tonight. And And ultimately, I feel that the only decision that we would be able to come to is to remove the Vance Monument, just because of the fact that what the NC statute stipulates and what Ms. Miles brought up about how it'd be very challenging to find another location that has the same magnitude as our city square. And also from the resolution, it would be pretty hard to repurpose the monument in such a way where the original shape and meaning would be completely untied from it. So I just feel that that's the only option we have. And I really appreciate everything that we've done together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Savannah. Next is Mr. Lawrence Gillian, if you're ready. Liam? And Lonnie, I don't know if you're talking, but you're muted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm ready. As I listened to Catherine and did some good math, I was never good in math, but I think that came out to about 122 years of Vance Monument. Ironically, yesterday was Veterans Day, and 53 years ago, as a young Marine from about 17,000 feet in the air, I got dropped with fellow Marines into a place called Vietnam. Never, ever did I ever dream that I would be in a position today that I am honored to have been able to serve and hopefully make some kind of contribution about the Vance Monument. I've written mine and they're posted. I don't know if I could say that any better, but I also want to share with you another monument in Asheville. It's really not a monument that took great pains and a lot of fortitude and determination on the part of Asheville City Council and the Housing Authority, City of Asheville. The place was called Lee Walker Heights, public housing that was built specifically for veterans returning from World War II, or maybe Korea, I've forgotten which one. But when it was built wrong. It was only one way in, one way out. One of few in the entire United States public housing developments where you enter the house through the kitchen. Finally, after all these years, if you go up Biltmore Avenue and across from St. Joseph Hospital, there's a new Lee Walker Heights going up. Very modern and very hopefully designed to serve the most needy of all. It will be mixed housing. And when I think about that, I think about the Vance Monument. And like Dennis and everybody else, I feel honored to have been able to participate with you. What I appreciate most and what I take away from this is the honesty, the transparency, and the candor. Because in all of my life's work, race is one of the hardest things to talk about among the different races and interracial. So I too am total favor of removal. And I think that's the only way that we can go if we're going to make the kind of significant change in the statement that makes it inclusive for everybody for the next 122 years. So thank you, and I've enjoyed it so much.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. And thank you all for your words. Everybody's been pretty within three minutes, so we're doing great on time. And if people have more to say, that's okay too. I'll just maybe drop in the chat when you've gone past 3 minutes. So that being said, next I want to welcome on Elizabeth Harper, if you're ready.
Yeah, I wrote mine down for the sake of brevity and clarity. So I'm in favor of removing the Vance Monument. When I was first appointed to this committee, I was in favor of repurposing, thinking we could have both the beautiful architectural structure that has become iconic in Asheville skyline, as well as a monument that is inclusive and welcoming. After much personal reflection, listening to the thoughtful deliberation of this committee, and especially after hearing from our community, I no longer think that is possible. No matter what sort of joyful and welcoming artistry is applied to the monument's facade, the core will remain rotten. I believe we cannot have anything other than a fresh start as we begin to acknowledge and address the ways oppression exists in our community, and the monument, no matter the original intent of its installation, has become a symbol of that racism and oppression. Now is the time to take decisive and bold action. And truthfully, I'm ashamed that listening to Asheville's Black community as they tell us that the monument is a site of pain, and then honoring and responding without hesitation to ease that pain could be considered bold. At the outset, my personal ideal outcome for this task force was to create a space that invited the necessary hard conversations where we begin to reckon with the many ways racism has impacted our communities. I do not believe that there can be healing without these discussions. And I cannot think of a better way to start these conversations than with visible action that will no doubt ignite, and already has, those conversations. Lastly, I want to thank my fellow committee members for your thoughtful consideration of this issue, as well as the city and county staff that have worked behind the scenes and did an excellent job of engaging the community, making sure we received all the feedback, as well as facilitating the virtual meeting process, including streaming and taking comments via phone. No matter what decision we make, we will be angering some portion of our community. For me, I would rather have the anger of those who call for upholding the status quo rather than the disappointment of those who are looking for clear and direct action from the county and city that leaves no doubt that they are listening. I saw a clip this morning of Yvette Simpson talking about current events, and she said, "I want the kind of unity that leads to change for people who have waited for it." If we are to be serious about reparations, then we need to make sure our actions convey the weight of our sincerity and our readiness to change. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Liz. Next, I want to welcome on Essie Hutchinson, if you're ready. I believe Essie is usually back by a phone.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, this is poorly prepared. I would like to see the Vance Monument taken down. I think it would just be getting repetitive, but I really agree what people have said so far. I definitely do think that a portion of our community will be upset, but upset in a way where they just have so much privilege they don't understand how certain things can affect people of color. And I don't really feel bad for those people, because even like the Vance Monument doesn't really represent Vance. Like when people see it, I'm sure a ton of people in our community know nothing of what Vance does, and just because of the structure. And I think a lot of these structures in America don't really represent the person that they're made for. More just like a kind of like an offering to kind of like a god, by not having something specific that really represents about like what they cared about or what they did, or like a hobby. I don't know. I think that's more, that would be a better way to make like a monument for someone. But on that note, I just don't think the Vance Monument is necessary to be there. That's a place where slaves used to be sold, and it would be a really good opportunity for an African American to make a statue that represents African American culture, and because that is very lost in America, and Asheville as well. Asheville seems predominantly like a white city, and it doesn't. Yeah, I think African American culture has been drowned out for sure. So I think it should be taken down. Thank you.
Thank you, Essie, for your words. Next, I want to welcome on David King.
Don't have a great deal to say this evening. I do want to thank City Council and the Buncombe County Commission for commissioning this and taking the step to do so. want to thank all of our fellow board members or task members. I especially want to thank our two chairs for taking on additional work with this task force. And I also want to thank the city and county staff who are often the unsung heroes, and also our facilitator who work behind the scenes to make these things happen. And I've gone through a lot of thought process throughout this. This has been very interesting. It's been educational. It's been thought-provoking. And I feel like I can cast a vote comfortably next week. I'm going to sustain from making a comment. I'm afraid we're bordering on taking an informal vote right now. So I will cast my vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. If you will mute yourself, that way we don't have any feedback. Thank you so much. And then next I want to welcome on Mr. Bernard Oliphant. Saw you on here earlier.
I should have known that I should have already been unmuted. I apologize to the group. At the same time, trying to give David all of his seconds. To the whole task force, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate all the efforts you have done. And I want to speak simply with truth and love from a position of strength and power. And if I did a simple roll call, I don't call it a vote, but from the reflections of what you all have already said, I look back to the Old Testament in Psalms 133, which simply said, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is when brethren dwell together in unity." Unity has come out to be a primary theme for this task force, whether we admit it or not. And I simply, as much as I regret, would probably cast my vote today, not waiting till next week for removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Next, I want to welcome on alternate Andrea Olson.
Hello. But first of all, I want to thank you all for your hard work and dedication. I am really impressed by what you've all shared so far tonight and for the past few weeks. Now, Lawrence encouraged us to be honest and open and use candor. I'd like to bring in another point of view from what most of you have shared, if that's okay. People walk by the monument and they're reminded of a sordid history of slavery and oppression that hurts. We can all agree that we do not want that. I heard that on all the calls, on the public comments, and that's something that letting people be hurt by this is definitely wrong. I am, however, for repurposing and rededicating, and I'll share about why. The presentation on that today encapsulated a lot of things, but I just want to add to that to remember the Cherokee. That's part of my culture as well. In any case, Betsy Brown Braun, as we mentioned, an education mentor, said, prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. Removing all offensive things from our children's path only serves to weaken them. It does not strengthen them and teach resilience. One can argue that history needs to stay right where we can see it so we can learn never to repeat it again, like the legend Mr. Bacote said twice when visiting our task force. We could direct these resources and energies into lowering our crime rate, supporting Black families, and halting Black on Black crime. Not too long ago, my son's friend and classmate, an 8-year-old African-American boy, was shot by his mother's Black boyfriend in their Asheville home. The man killed his mother, his older sister, and his older brother right in front of him and his younger siblings, who were also shot. Preventing tragedies like this could easily become our community's focus. This architectural object, on the other hand, could be easily repurposed and rededicated into an educational hub, a center of storytelling, a place of unity, as Lawrence has suggested, a symbol of the unity of all colors of people who've made this city amazing, a dedication to the indigenous people of this land that we violently stole this land from, and of course, a memorial to all of the Black people who have suffered here over history. I'd like to retain the beautiful artisanship of the folks who built this obelisk, which is a symbol of life in God, and baptize it of its sins to be repurposed anew. I know that is a big ask. I hear you all. I'm not a voting member. Therefore, if you all decide to remove the monument, I would hope that the Cherokee specifically are not forgotten, along with the Black people who've been harmed in our area. And I hope that children of all colors feel represented and welcomed in that space in the future. As Mrs. Whiteside shared, let's use that space so that every child who walks by this site 100 years from now feels included. Thank you all.
Thank you, Andrea. I want to welcome next on Ben Scales.
Thank you very much. Good evening. For the record, my name is Ben Scales, and I apologize that I'm probably going to go over the 3 minutes. I am so proud to serve on this task force with these people, and I've learned so much from them. But the reason I want to take a little more time is because I am going to offer a view that is different from almost all that we've heard today. In one of the first meetings of this task force, I stated my intention that I would listen to the voices of the people of color on this task force and in the community and take my cues and guidance from them. It is our African American community that suffers the harm from the Vance Monument, and I view it as our mission to seek to address that harm in the context of the much larger movement to transform our society from one rooted in systemic racism to one centered in anti-racism, equality, equity, and inclusion. But I'm not trying to channel the Black experience. I'm not trying to see the world through Black eyes or walk in a Black person's shoes. I can't do those things. I'm a white man, born and raised in the South. Therefore, I can only offer the perspective of a white man. I can only offer my own perspective. To do anything else, I believe, would be inauthentic and false. What I bring to this task force is my track record of work in the Black community with its leaders and with its youth. I also bring a deep love for Asheville and Buncombe County and all our neighbors of all races and backgrounds. I moved here with my family 18 years ago, primarily because of the musical heritage of this region and Asheville's reputation around the world as a tolerant, welcoming, progressive community. But once I got here, I was particularly drawn to our city's vibrant and eclectic built environment, its architecture. From the iconic City Hall and courthouse buildings to the Jackson Building and the Flatiron Building and the Grove Arcade, the Smith McDowell House, the Grove Park Inn, and yes, even the Biltmore itself. I joined the board of the Preservation Society, and one of the first projects I worked on was to save the historic Hayes and Hobson Building from demolition. After many months of effort, we were successful in convincing the building's owner to not demolish the building, but rather to repurpose it into what is now Pax Tavern. Later, I worked to save the Ivy Building on the campus of AB Tech from demolition. They were planning to knock that building down for a parking lot. Again, we convinced the powers that be that an adaptive reuse of that historic building, which held so many memories for so many, was a better use of the resources. Among the structures that to me contributes directly to the sense of place that is unique to Asheville is the Vance Monument. It's present in every photo of that area of downtown for over 120 years. For all that time, it's been a meeting place, a landmark, a place where people gather to pray and protest and celebrate holidays and rally for causes all over the place, all over the map. To say it's an iconic structure by which Asheville is recognized is an understatement. Ms. Shirley talked about the Zoom call that she, Bernard, and I attended Tuesday night. Well, yesterday I spent about an hour and a half talking with the author who gave that talk. And he suggested that we consider what purpose does the monument serve today? Not why it was built, but what work does it do? If it hurts the community more than it helps, then it has to be either repurposed or removed. Now, when I look upon the obelisk, when I first saw it, I didn't think about Vance. I really didn't know anything about Vance at all until I joined this task force. I didn't realize how little I knew until I joined this task force. But since then, I've paid close attention to the presentations given by the historians, and I've learned significantly more from the research I've done on my own, finding lots of information about Vance and others of his era, such as George Pack, who paid for the monument. And these things were not discussed at all by the historians that spoke to us. And I discovered facts that were directly contrary to some of the things that we were told. And now I've come to a much better understanding of who Vance was, what he said and wrote and what he stood for, and how he was viewed by his contemporaries, his biographers, and historians who study him. Through all this, I've come to a much more nuanced understanding of Vance as a human being who did great things, who cared deeply for the people of North Carolina, and particularly his mountain home, and was universally loved in his time, and who spoke on, wrote about, and stood for some notions, beliefs, and sentiments that we find repugnant today. While I feel like I understand and sympathize with why the monument was built and dedicated to him and his life, I agree that having a structure as significant and centrally located as the obelisk is should not bear his name today. In saying this, I don't intend to denigrate him or his legacy, but I believe that no white man from his era who was not an active abolitionist, as was George Pack, incidentally, should be celebrated in such a way in our town square. So putting these things together, my reverence for our built environment and my recognition of Vance's history as a proponent of slavery and white supremacy leads me to recommend that we repurpose and rededicate the obelisk to recognize one or more of the many African Americans who have contributed so much to our community. The first name that comes to mind to me is James Vester Miller, who, like Vance and Pack and Richard Sharp Smith, who designed the monument, was a Mason, sworn into that secret brotherhood, one of the guiding principles of which was equality of all men. Former slave and educator Isaac Dixon is also worthy of such an honor, I believe, and many others who I hope Ms. Whiteside will name when it's her time to speak. Yes? You want me to stop talking?
Yes, I feel like we said from the beginning that it would be 3 minutes, and you've gone over. Do you have more you'd like to? Well, what you might do is hold it for the discussion.
Is do what?
You could hold the rest of it for the discussion, because after we've all had our 3 minutes, we're going to have a discussion.
All right. I will yield.
Thanks so much. I also want to clarify that we can have that discussion. We would extend into the 6:30 timeframe, but we did leave that option open for today's meeting. Let's move to the next person here, which would be Miss Shirley W. Whitesides. I want to pass the floor to you.
Thank you. I would like to say this has been one of the best task force I've ever worked with the subjects that we had to discuss. There was never anger or disagreement, and Asheville is great to have a group of people like you, and I appreciate having the opportunity to serve. I just jotted down some notes, and I hope it will complete my 3 minutes. As an African-American woman, artist, arts educator, I would like to see the obelisk repurposed so our youth can appreciate the sculpture and the history. As African Americans have been considered or perceived as invisible people. From the day that I came to Asheville to now, people are asking, where are the Black people? I've been in Asheville for 50 years, and I taught school during that time. And I've had the opportunity to work with the city in designing and creating artwork that will make our students become better citizens. The monument has not bothered me as much as seeing cross burning in my neighborhood growing up in Rocky Mount by the Ku Klux Klans. The monument could be used as a new way of communication in the sky with the lights. Asheville could set the stage for telling the real history. Since Vance family wants to, some of Vance family members want the monument to remain. Altering the base of the monument could be designed so you cannot recognize the base of it. New art design could be incorporated into African American art that will help with tourism and the economy. Bottom line, we need to learn the truth about our history. And if you take Vance off, it really doesn't matter. It really, as long as I've been in Asheville, that monument has never bothered me. And to think you have something like that, the Washington Monument in DC, and I don't know if they're gonna take it down, but Asheville can set the stage just like reparations. We can teach other communities that we gotta learn to tell the truth and weave it into a work of art so everybody will be happy. If you take it down, you're gonna have some people unhappy. If you repurpose it, you're gonna have some people unhappy. And that's why in our first purpose, we said the obelisk has 4 sides. The plaintiff, number 1, could tell the truth about Vance and tell how it got there, the obelisk. Number 2, explain through documents, or it could be a plaque, or illustrate that slaves were sold there. The kids need to know that. I bet you every city there's a place where slaves were stolen. Y'all don't know what integration is about from what I came up with. Even getting on the bus and putting the money in, then getting off the bus and go to the back of the bus and get on the seat, get on the bus and drinking colored water and wait in line an hour until all the white people have been waited on in a department store and then you've been served. This is nothing compared to what a lot of African Americans have experienced. Looking at that monument doesn't bother me, but our kids need to know the history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for your support with time. I do want to check with Ms. Shirley. Was there anything, were you on your last statement, or was there anything else that you'd like to conclude with before we?
No, I got the buzzer. I think the main thing, we have got to look at Asheville in a different way. We don't see the portrait or the statue of Vance. And then use, when I say the lighting, use the architectural part to show in our repurposing, where at night you can show love, unity, peace. It can be, Asheville can be different from the other cities. They're always anew. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I want to go ahead at this time and circle back and see if there are any additional comments, additional statements or questions. It seemed like we are at the original end time. So I do want to check with the co-chairs and the task force members to see if we are extending. And, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I marked it down and I missed my own note. I can't forget about Miss Simmons, Miss Orleans Simmons, if you will come on and share with us. The floor is yours at this time. And then
thank you so much.
I'll open it up. Thank you.
I have had the opportunity to listen to all of the task force members and appreciate all of the remarks and all of your hard work. I also thank the City Council and the Buncombe County Commission for creating this task force. It is a pleasure to serve And I also thank the staff for helping to make my job easier. Without repeating anything that has already been heard, and I have heard some wonderful things, and realize if this monument is left in its original form, rather than completely removed, or its materials not altered beyond recognition, it will continue to serve as a symbol of white supremacy to those most affected by its presence. It has and does affect me by its presence. It is a health hazard to me. I consider it a wound that I have and have carried for many, many years. Remembering the first time I saw that monument with the name Vance and was told that story that made me tremble. And to think that I had been told that he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And I remember the first time I saw a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Again, I shivered. Yes, it has, and it does affect me and many other people. And if it is still present there, probably other people to come. Therefore, I feel that it should be removed. I am now finding that it is a challenge to relocate it because I am finding out that we do not at this time have anyone responding and saying, I will take it, I will display it, I can keep it, and it can stay in my museum. That has not happened. So why are we keeping it? Not only do I want to see it removed, I would recommend that it be replaced and the entire area that surrounds it be repurposed to match our time. And that is a reflection of who we are in this community. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Simmons, and thank you all for your very honest and transparent sharing. I want to, at this time, acknowledge that there are a few requests to have things added from task force members. And so if you all can stay with us, we're going to go ahead and move into just a brief round of discussion and follow-up. And we had prepared to be here at least until potentially 6:30 if needed. That said, so I see Savannah, if you can go up first, and then followed by Dennis Spagnant. We'll circle back to Ben if you had something that you wanted to add, and then if anybody else wants to jump in the stack. I don't want to assume that you wanted to jump in discussion, Ben, but we can add you in if needed. Savannah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I just wanted to add that I really think that it's time that we stop perpetuating the myth of Black on Black crime and the misconception that Black people are plagued by a pathology of violence. And I also want to say that studies have shown that people commit crime at the same rate, and that more so often people who are not people of color tend to commit crime at a higher rate. The only difference is that people of color are more likely to be incarcerated for the crime that they commit. And I think that's one of the challenges that people of color have to face each and every day. They also have to face the fact that people continuously march in the streets to demand that people are held accountable for killing them when they are doing nothing but existing and living their life. They also have to deal with the fact that their children are 3 times more likely to die before the age of 1 than other people. And they also have to deal with the fact that whenever they ask for things that they need to make their life better, people continuously do not listen to them. And I think us choosing not to remove the monument would be another instance of people of color asking for what they need in order for their life to be better, and then people continuously not listening to them and prioritizing their own feelings, their own understanding of what it means to have their experience over what they're actually telling them. And it also makes me feel as though we can't have hope that we'll be able to fix bigger systemic issues like health disparities, the achievement gap within education system, and so on and so forth, and even disparities within the criminal justice system, like I was talking about before, if we can't simply decide to be on the same page to remove a monument that has been deemed a public health safety. And it also reaffirms my understanding of why people of color have lost faith in the city of Asheville and their ability to prioritize their needs and think about them and have their best interests at heart. And I really think that's why year after year, we see less and less Black people and people of color within Asheville. And so I just thought that was important to add. And thank you.
Thank you for your points that you raised, Savannah. So I'll pass it over to Dennis.
Yeah, Martina. Just real quick, Lonnie made a great statement is, race is super hard to talk about. It's just never been comfortable. But I think the fact that this task force exists, and we did exactly that. And so, thank you, Lonnie, for bringing that up. That actually keyed in as far as moving forward with this. What I would hope that Buncombe County and the city of Asheville would do is whatever is desired to go, if the removal is that it is inclusive of everybody. And there's been some great suggestions that were made just even within this task force about what could happen. But I hope that is the case, is that we can come together as humans and create an inclusive space for all. And that would be just awesome to see that happen. And then Ms. Whitesides, what an eloquent statement you had. I loved every bit of it. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Cortina.
Thank you so much. Lonnie, you're up next, and then Andrea. Ben, I didn't see a yes. Did you say yes? Okay, so let's go ahead and go to Ben, and then Lonnie, you'll be up next. Ben was in a second.
Yeah, and I just want to apologize for going long. I didn't understand we were going to be limited to 3 minutes when I was preparing my remarks. So I apologize. I'm just going to jump to the end of what I was going to say, and it's in acknowledgement of what I just heard Ms. Simmons say, and it's the first time it means so much to me hearing what she has to say. And I acknowledge that I am a white man, and that as such, my feelings are completely and utterly irrelevant to the mission of this task force. I felt I needed to share my thoughts and feelings anyway, and my beliefs anyway, because I feel like I was called to this task force for a reason. But if that monument has the harmful effect that on even one person that has been described as having to Ms. Simmons, who grew up around that monument, who felt unwelcome in its presence and in its space, then it has to go. And I will honor and support whatever this task force agrees to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Lonnie, and then Andrea.
Okay. One is a point of clarification. I heard 94,000 in terms of the petition about Roy Harris. Is it 94,000 or is it 9,400?
Thank you. It is 9,400, and thank you for catching that for the people tuning in via audio. that I think Savannah might have read it as 94,000, but it is in fact as it read on the PowerPoint.
Okay. And I listened very closely to everybody, and my heart sort of went out to Andrea as she talked, because I want to make sure that we include the Cherokee Nation. It's not minuscule, it's as equal to African American or whatever else you come up with. And I want to assure her that that happens, at least from the committee support, that we support that 100%. That's it.
Thank you so much. And Andrea, you have it next.
Lawrence, thank you so much for saying that. I really, really appreciate that. That's part of what I was going to say as a follow-up. We were tasked in the onboarding guide to engage the Eastern Band of the Cherokee. We've had guests on, and I just don't want them to be forgotten. These people were immediately oppressed by white people. My people oppressed my people. So I totally resonated with the document you shared, Lonnie. And their burial grounds are located underneath this city. We're not sure exactly where, but we would be remiss to ignore that in our final recommendations. I just want to remind that. And in response to Savannah, my apologies for postulating so widely. I don't have any data with me. I was speaking from personal experience. I worked in the San Francisco County jail system for many years in the Sisters program and saw a tremendous amount of Black on Black crime. That's a personal experience of my own. My stepdad is Black. He's been my father for 3/4 of my life. And he has educated me on the point of view that I shared in my presentation today as well. So as much as I have researched it, I don't want to get into argument about it, but I do want to share that a lot of that is from my personal experience and things that I've heard from the Black people I helped in the Sisters Ward of how they could reform their lives and work together within their own community to prevent that crime. So just wanted to clarify that. No harm intended on that. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And is there any other comment? Ms. Shirley, you have something? Yes, ma'am. I'll pass the mic to you.
Do I need to send
I would like.
Oh, Mr. Bernard.
He was first.
I'll go after Shirley.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you.
I would like to see the monument repurposed. And if we want to try to get African Americans to come to the city of Asheville, we need to start marketing. If you don't market it, people won't come. Since the pandemic, I've seen more African Americans downtown because they're coming in because they know Asheville is a safe place as far as breathing and they can feel free. And I just want to say, since I've been in Asheville, I have experienced racism, even with my job and all in this town. And that monument might hurt somebody else, but it doesn't hurt me. And we've got to tell the real story to our kids and learn to appreciate what we have to offer here in Asheville. The monument can stay and you can build around it if you want to add more African-American art and all. We should have a prime space because every time, when I first came to Asheville, I asked, where are the Black people? Every time people come to Asheville, they ask me, where are the Black people? It's time for us to stop, to not be invisible. And you could take this monument and build on it. And you don't have to mention Vance. I think the sculpture deserves to be there. And if we tell the narrative the right way, we won't have that problem. But I just want to know that we as Black people, we have experienced pain all our lives and especially from the eastern part of North Carolina. Martin Luther King Jr. had his first speech, I Have a Dream, and when I was in the 9th grade at Booker T. Washington High School. He came there because of how the tobacco workers were being treated and everyday workers. They were getting below minimum wage, weren't even getting $2 an hour. Martin Luther King Jr. and this documented, go to the North Carolina historical documents. It's a marker Now, I know what racism is about and the hurt, but we've got to learn to teach our kids. We did that with our children, and they can work and get along with anybody. We've got to teach our kids and everybody the true story. Thank you. Didn't mean to get all, but I have to tell it. Y'all don't know what integration, segregation has been about.
No apologies needed, Ms. Shirley. You're getting a lot of people are with you. Ms. Simmons, I see your hand. Mr. Bernard, I want to yield to you, and then Ms. Simmons will go up after you.
I'll follow Arlene. It's all right. Go ahead, Ms. Simmons.
You're muted. Ms. Simmons, you're still muted.
You're still on mute.
There you
Now,
go. Mm-hmm.
Again, I have been listening, and Ben, thank you for hearing me. Ben, thank you for fulfilling me. Andrea, I am sure that with the action that's going to be taken by our governing bodies, that we will be able to transform that entire area into a place where all of us can be represented and that all of us will be welcome. And I hope that whatever we decide is going to bring unity. That's going to bring unity to our city and to our county and all of the people that live here. And I just thank you for all of the comments. And yes, I am thinking about the redesigning of the entire area, because not only does the Vance Monument sends out this negative message for me, but the whole entire area and what it had been, that had the white women on one side, the black men on the other side, the white men on one side, white women on the other side, that had restrooms there. And we were not allowed to use them. There was the movie theater, that was the Plaza Theater, that was also there. And we couldn't go inside to see a movie. There were also the restaurants there that we could not take a seat. There was the Pack Library there, and we could not go inside, sit and read a book or to check out a book. So I hope that at this time that we all can come forward with some unity and try to change some of those things, try to take away some of the bad memories and replace them with good memories, and something where we will all be represented and we will all be welcome.
Mr. Bernard, you have the floor.
Thank you.
So much, Ms. Simmons.
This experience has been one of exhilarating joy, peace, and harmony. In the fact that we were able to speak openly, truthfully, and as Shirley said, and not get angry with each other. That ability takes us back to a form of education and a form of an educational hub. In the repurposing committee, one of our key challenging points was make it an educational hub for the crossroads of Asheville, North Carolina. And if you think about where Asheville stands and sits, we're at the crossroads. When you look at the centerpiece of where we come in and how everything circulates around, it's right at the crossroads. What better place for an educational hub? Whether the monument stands or is restructured, it still should, as part of our also implied task, was to make recommendations if it comes down what to do. So part of our recommendation, I recommend that we insist on that being an immediate educational hub, not a hole that is left there to stand for years or months while somebody else comes together to figure out what to do with it. That should be an immediate challenge to put together an educational hub for Asheville. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard, for your comments there. I'm going to check the chat, make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay.
Cortina, this is David.
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Please.
Sitting here listening to all the comments and very wonderful comments, very thought-provoking. I'd like to make a recommendation that when we do take the vote next week, part of if we add about an awful what Bernard just said. One of the things that should be for this, like removal, should also follow with create an inclusive space, that we don't just leave it, okay, we remove it, now what? We should insist on creating an exclusive space. If we go Ms. Shirley's route and we leave it and repurpose, it still should be said it's a place of inclusion. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment or pose a question or anything else? Ms. Shirley?
I didn't mean to get emotional, but I had to talk from my heart, speak from my heart.
Absolutely. And
that's the entire value of this task force. It's heartfelt.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. So if there are no additional comments or questions from the task force members, I do just want to bring our attention to the task at hand that you all have as task force members over the next week, recognizing that there will be a public vote on the 19th. Our plan is to gather back here on our virtual meeting space at 4:30. The co-chairs and I will be meeting along with the staff team tomorrow to kind of recap and debrief this meeting as always. If you all have any suggestions or things you want us to consider as we're planning the agenda or next steps between now and next Thursday, please be sure to send an email. And I think that those are all of the recaps and next steps that I have. I'm going to turn it over to the co-chairs at this time if they have anything else to add and to adjourn us.
Thank you, Cortina. Are there any last words before I call for a motion to adjourn? I do want to say thank you very much for tonight. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your hard work. Cortina, thank you for this journey. And with that, I will entertain a motion at this time to adjourn the meeting. And with just a reminder about that the next meeting will be on November 19th, and we will make our final recommendations. We will be meeting alongside the governing bodies, Asheville City Council, Buncombe County Commissioners.
This is now, and I'd like to move that we be adjourned, and I ask that the Lord watch over us while we're absent one from the other.
Thank you. That's from Bernard Oliphant. Here's second to the motion.
Shirley W. Whitesides, I second the motion.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that we adjourn the meeting on this November 12th at 6:25 p.m. All those in favor, please, or opposed, please answer to the vote. Co-Chair Deborah Miles. Catherine Calhoun Cutshaw.
Aye.
Dennis A. Fagnet Jr.
Aye.
Savannah Gibson.
Aye.
Lawrence Gillum.
Aye.
Elizabeth Harper.
Aye.
Essie Hutchison.
Aye.
David King.
Aye.
Bernard Oliphant.
Aye.
And Andrea Olson is an alternate. Ben Scales.
Aye.
Shirley Whitesides.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting stand adjourned. And good night.